the far right. With nearly 100% of the vote counted, Bolsonaro has come in 11 points ahead of his rival. NPR's Philip Reeves is out on the streets of Rio de Janeiro and says celebrations among his supporters have started.
This is the biggest change in the political landscape of Brazil since the end of military dictatorship in 1985. The 63-year-old Bolsonaro is a veteran congressman who admires those dictatorship years and has a record of sexist, racist and misogynist remarks. Using the internet, he capitalized on public anger with the leftist Workers' Party, who ruled Brazil for 13 of the last 15 years, during a period marred by deep recession and a massive corruption scandal. Bolsonaro's supporters are celebrating outside his home in Rio de Janeiro, but when he takes office in January, they'll be looking to him to fulfill his promises to fight graft and crime. Philip Reeves, NPR News, Rio de Janeiro.
Game 5 of the World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Boston Red Sox takes place in L.A. tonight. The Red Sox lead the series 3-1. You're listening to NPR News from Washington. A month-long assembly of Catholic bishops at the Vatican has ended with a call for women to have a place at the Church's decision-making table. NPR's Sylvia Pajoli reports the discussions were dominated by sex abuse scandals and demands for a greater role for women.
The final document recognized the urgency of an inescapable change and called for a greater presence of women in church structures, while respecting that the priesthood remains for men only. The final document did not maintain the expression LGBT that appeared in the preparatory paper. Conservative bishops from Africa, as well as Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput, objected to its use. Chaput said there's no such thing as an LGBT Catholic or transgender Catholic, as if our sexual appetites defined who we are. On sex abuse, the bishops called for strong preventive measures to prevent any repeat of clerical sex abuse and called for stricter selection of priesthood candidates. Sylvia Poggioli, NPR News, Rome.
In Syria, the country's National Museum was reopened today, more than 6 years after it was shut down and emptied as the 7-year-old civil war overcame the capital of Damascus. The Syrian Minister of Culture says today's event is a sign of a return to normal life, saying today Damascus has recovered. Authorities shut down museums and stored away over 300,000 artifacts, but still, ISIS destroyed some of the sites and looted others. Among the antiquities on display, murals from the 2nd century. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
You're listening to WBHM, Digital Broadcast Talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back. You are listening to Fate Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am Kat Hobson, your host. I am joined tonight by two gentlemen who have come together. They have put together a group called Supernatural and Paranormal University. They are striving to find methods to bring groups in to help devise methods of accurately testing in their research measurements or some sort of actual scientific data processing to document paranormal activity. And it's really fascinating. It's so difficult to do. When I spoke with Lloyd Auerbach on several occasions, he stressed the importance of being able to get basic biologies in testing, accurate ranges, the equipment ranges, and it's pretty fascinating. So we are back with Greg and Noah, and I am excited to continue this conversation. Gentlemen, y'all are so great, and I appreciate conversation because I think this matters a whole lot.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question for you.
Ask me.
If you could have a piece of equipment that would allow you to see, just like, let's think of Ghostbusters, the movie, for example. They had their ecto goggles.
Right.
They had goggles that they would put on, and it allowed them to see a spirit, to see a ghost in an environment where you could not see that with your naked eye. Imagine that we can make that a reality, to where we go into a haunted location, we can put on these goggles and we can see these entities, we can see who they are, we can communicate with them, we can in turn become a mechanical psychic, that where we are able, the average person, to experience the same thing that a medium or a psychic can, and we can interact with these spirits and help them in all kinds of manners. Wouldn't that piece of equipment be awesome as a paranormal investigator?
I would pay what it took to have that piece of equipment.
We can get to that point. We all have to work together, share our knowledge, share our results, our documented measurements of equipment, and we can get to that point. I have no lack of faith in that at all.
I agree.
But one or two teams working together, or 5 or 10 working together, is not going to accomplish that.
Well, it's like, I'm so excited. I won an SLS camera at the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. It still doesn't work yet, but we're working on that. So I am very fortunate, and I appreciate very much the fact that I did win that. I have seen some of those in action, and I don't understand the science behind them, although I'm in the process of trying to learn that. But I am really enthusiastic about being able to utilize this. It's supposed to be a newer program that shows more clearly activity. But to have something that would, without fail, let me see and interact and communicate would be beyond my expectations at this time.
All it takes is cooperation, and we can do it. Look at the 1960s. There was a challenge put out by President Kennedy to put man on the moon.
Yes, sir.
Humanity and all of our best minds came together to work together, even all the way down to the guy that swept the floor, all put all their heart, soul, and energy into making this effort happen, to put man on the moon. People debate whether that happened or not. That's a different conversation.
That is a whole different conversation.
But the point of it is if we can set our minds to a single goal, if we can put all of our energy, our documentation, our measurements, we can get to that goal.
Well,
now,
you know what the problem is, right?
Too many egos.
No way to monetize it. But there is, because can you imagine if you could come across Tesla and say, can you help me recreate the notes that were stolen from you?
The knowledge you would get from Nikola Tesla conversations would be mind exploding.
There are things that would create a monetization opportunity for the person who can develop this technology. But it's not going to be, I don't feel, an individual. And I also think that Bob Bigelow's interest in all things unusual, based on his purchase at one time of Skinwalker Ranch, he has that interest, he has that cash. And did he just get bored? Did he find something that made him think this wouldn't be good for humanity? Did he decide that UFOs are more his bag, right? There's something that changed his mind away from the paranormal and moved him back towards ufology, which is also paranormal, but a different channel. So there are ways that would create a monetization process. And if you work together, instead of just being that lone gun out there that's not going to get the documentation you need to evolve that, to move that forward. You're right. I think that you got to work together to achieve that.
Right. There's just so much that we can accomplish working together than working against each other. Some people see that, some people don't. And the people that don't ultimately affect all the ones that do try to work together, because they could be a real big part of the key. They could be having phenomenal evidence captured, great techniques, but they're not sharing them with another team because they're afraid they're not going to get another investigation, or they're not going to get a TV show, or anything out of it to benefit them. But if we can put all that crap on a shelf, and if our team was getting EVPs, Class A's, every investigation we went to, if we could share that with another team and they're able to accomplish that along with another team, then we're doing way more for not only ourselves, but we're doing way more for the client, which is first and foremost, and the spirit that we're interacting with. So that's why I say it all boils down to people's egos. People worried about themselves, worried about the results of what's going to happen versus the bigger picture.
I think that there's a real need to go out and just say, look, this is what needs to happen. I mean, because there have been parapsychological associations since the 1800s. People have been working, and probably much longer than that. I mean, you know, there were biblical people that were interacting with spirits. But as far as actual research, I know that the British started in the early 1800s, and the American Parapsychological Association was, or the Psychical Association was, I think the 1870s, but don't hold me to that. So this is not new. This is not a new science. This is not a new methodology, you know, per se, except that now we have electronics that we can bring into the fold that get us closer to being able to separate frequencies and to, you know, I use a spectrograph to see where my sound is moving when I'm doing an investigation, what levels the tonality is. And it's really kind of interesting to watch that, because I won't be getting EVPs, but I'm sitting there watching frequency changes.
Right.
There are all kinds of things that you can utilize that we couldn't utilize decades ago, but it's the same curiosity, right? The same curiosity that brings us to the table has been bringing people to the table for, you know, centuries.
That it has.
And we're
definitely
not any closer because nobody's cooperating.
In a way, we're not any closer. In a way, we are closer. You know, it almost just depends on that reality of who you want to listen to, and what you and I have talked about before, what I've spoken about with many. Heck, it came up earlier in our conversation. To me, it has absolutely been proven. I really don't care that people tell me that it hasn't been, because they're wrong. And I don't care how pompous that sounds. I get the general view
That's
is
why
that it
I
hasn't.
like you.
Yeah, it has.
It has. I agree with you. I know it has. I've experienced that myself. But it hasn't been proven to a scientific standard.
And I'm going to do my best to keep working on making that standardized. If that's what helps more people believe in it, then that's what it takes.
And if that's what helps people to be able to communicate, to learn the needs of spirits, that's what it takes.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I think it's presumptuous of us to think that, A, we can cross them, because we've never been dead. We don't know what needs to happen. There is no handbook. But B, to think that everybody that's here is stuck. You know, I think people are where they want to be. That's a fairly new opinion for me based on experiences. But I do think that they have a need, or they wouldn't be. They're trying to accomplish a goal of some kind. And if we could understand what that was, or the people that they were around could understand what that was, then they could assist with that. And those spirits could go on to their next plane, whether it's reincarnation, whether it's just chilling through the universe, whether it's having